My name is Evadne. I am 47 years old. For more than 25 years, I worked for the Canadian Forces in a very special part called intelligence. This means I did secret work that most people would never even know about. My job was quiet. It was precise. It was hidden behind computers, firewalls, and doors that only a few people could open. I worked deep inside Ottawa, in a building that had strong security and many locked rooms. I stopped bad people before they caused trouble. I prevented attacks before anyone knew they were coming. I kept secrets safe. I stopped disasters from happening. I did this for decades. I even worked during freezing Arctic winters when the lights went out and everything was dark. But nothing I did, nothing I had learned or trained for, could prepare me for what happened last spring in a courtroom in Halifax. I wore my full uniform that day, not because I wanted to look fancy or proud, but because it was my duty. The uniform reminded me of all the years I had served and all the people I had protected. My father had left his house and his money to me. He was clear in his will. He wrote down exactly what he wanted. But my family didn't like it. They didn't just want the money. They wanted the story changed. They wanted to rewrite everything about me. My younger sister, Amaris, sat beside her husband. She looked very stiff. Her lips were pressed together like she had swallowed her own conscience. My mother did not look at me at all. She kept staring at the shiny floor, pretending not to notice me. The family lawyer stood in front of the courtroom. She acted sad, but I knew it was fake. She said I was unstable. She said that all the years I worked for the Canadian Forces had made me weak. She said I had tricked our father while he was sick, that I forced him to sign papers, that I used my rank to make him obey me. I stayed quiet. I didn't say a word. I had spent most of my life listening and watching. I knew when to speak and when to stay silent. They were twisting my service, my loyalty, and my duty into something bad. They wanted to make me look shameful. Amaris said I was cold. Her husband said I scared him. My mother whispered softly, "We only wanted to help her." I thought to myself, let them lie. Let them make their wall of lies taller. Finally, the judge looked at me. He asked, "Do you have anything to say?" I stood up. My heels clicked on the floor, just like they had in the metal hallways of faraway places I had worked, places called Kandahar and other countries. I opened my leather case and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I handed it to the judge. "Your Honor," I said, "please read this. I believe it is very important." He nodded. He put on his glasses and started reading carefully, line by line. Slowly, the courtroom began to change. The judge's face became serious. His voice became calm but sharp, like a blade. He said, "Seal the room. No one leaves." People gasped. The chairs moved. There was confusion. My mother's face turned pale. Amaris looked at me, not with pride but with fear. Her husband held her wrist tightly. 2 agents walked in from the back of the courtroom. They were federal investigators. They were quiet, fast, and precise. I stood very still. I didn't feel angry or ready to fight. I wasn't there to get revenge. I was there for justice. It all started quietly, just like most betrayals do. One gray Monday morning in March, I was at home. The hardwood floor was cold under my bare feet. I was drinking coffee and checking emails on my phone. One email made me pause. It said my veterans' compensation had been sent, case ID 117Z. That was strange. I had not applied for anything. My benefits were untouched. My pension was small but enough. My 2-story cottage near Bedford Basin was paid off. I lived simply. Curious, I tapped on the email. My heart didn't race. I felt calm. The message showed my name, my CFID number, deployment logs, and a deposit of $42,000 into a bank account I didn't recognize. This was not a mistake. I made one encrypted call to a friend in the Department of Public Accounts. They sent me what I needed, a ledger, a paper trail. 3 months before, the title to my father's estate, our family home in downtown Halifax, had been quietly signed over to a company with the number 51,792 in Biddle. That name sounded familiar. It was the startup Amaris's husband had bragged about 2 Christmases ago. He said it would make them millionaires. At the time, I thought it was just a silly idea written on a cocktail napkin. I didn't take it seriously. But now, this company owned everything I had protected. It owned the house I had kept afloat when Dad got sick. I had even paid the final mortgage myself without anyone knowing. Now my name was erased. His name was on everything. That night, I drove to the house. The lights glowed warmly through the windows. I knocked. I held the deed in front of Amaris's husband. "What is this?" I asked. He barely looked up. "Just a bit of legal housekeeping," he said. Streamlining for taxes. Your name is gone. Everything is clean. You don't live here anymore, he said with a smile, like he had won a court case. I reminded him, I helped pay for this house. He shrugged. Past tense. I looked at my mother. She was curled in her usual armchair. She had a crossword in her lap, pen poised in the air. Did she know about this? She hesitated just a little. Enough to tell me that she might have known. He explained it. My mother murmured something about preserving things for the family. I looked at her and said, You mean his family? No one answered. Not Amaris. She looked away, too polite to say anything. I looked at the paper that had once meant everything to me. My contribution. My care. My legacy. Now there was only silence. I left without a word. I passed the hall mirror by the front door. I saw myself, tight jaw, steady eyes, breath held deep inside my chest. That night, I lay on the guest bed in my own former home. Streetlight pooled through the blinds. I opened a fresh notebook, not to cry, not to think about feelings, but to write records. Names. Dates. Transaction logs. Routing numbers. Corporate links. This wasn't about closure. This was about building a case. They thought they had written the last line. They had no idea I was just starting the prologue. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Heavy. Very heavy. The kind of heavy that warns you something inside is going to hurt. My name was printed in bold on the envelope, Evadne. No title. No rank. Just my name in black ink. The return address said, Morgan Family Advisory Board. Bentham and Lauren LLP. Halifax. I opened it. The top sheet had the header, Plaintiff Amaris Morgan. Defendant Evadne. Allegations. Misuse of assets. Emotional harm. Coercive influence. I stared at it for a long time. They were suing me. Amaris. My own sister. If you have ever been surprised or hurt by the people who were supposed to protect you, stay with me. This story is far from over. Amaris and my mother were behind it. The rest of the legal papers explained everything with sharp detail. They claimed that during my compassionate leave from Eastern Europe, I had manipulated our parents into giving me power of attorney and control of the Morgan Family Trust. A trust my father had set up decades ago. A trust one barely remembered. They said I used my rank, my presence, and my discipline as intimidation. They said I confused my mother into signing documents she didn't understand. The words in the paper were cold, legal, and sharpened to hurt. My uniform, once a symbol of duty, was now called a weapon. By noon, local media had the story. By dinner, it was on Atlantic Regional News. Pictures of me in dress uniform, none smiling. One picture mid-briefing, my expression steely. The caption said things like decorated officer under family fire, or Colonel Morgan. Hero or manipulator? I turned off the TV. But the headlines echoed everywhere. My phone lit up with messages from former colleagues. Some were supportive. Others stayed silent. Not the neutral silence of not taking sides, but the kind that moves away from you. Even the Canadian Forces Command responded. A careful, measured message from my superior recommended a temporary leave to deal with my domestic legal issues. I didn't argue. I needed time, not to feel sad, but to act. I gathered every financial record I could get access to, personal, family, estate. Then I hired a forensic accountant. Quietly, without a paper trail. I also brought in 2 analysts, both veterans. They were loyal only to the facts. Together, we built a timeline, transaction logs, email chains, account histories. Patterns emerged. 3 months before the lawsuit, a large withdrawal was made, just under federal oversight limits. The funds moved through shell accounts and temporary investments. They quietly reappeared in a nonprofit, a mental health foundation founded by Amaris's husband. Her name was on everything. Amaris's husband's company, LedgeView Analytics, appeared too, buried in ledgers and invoices under consulting fees, data optimization, and digital infrastructure support. It didn't stop there. They were moving money through veterans' assistance initiatives. Real names. Names I knew. Men and women I had served beside. Some are still alive. Some long gone. 8 confirmed. At first, I thought it was identity theft. But it wasn't chaotic. It was deliberate. Organized. I remembered Amaris's voice that night in the living room, soft and syrupy. You've been under so much pressure lately, Evadne. Maybe you're just overanalyzing things. She didn't think I could hear the silence behind her words. She forgot. I didn't survive 2 decades in counterintelligence by missing patterns. This wasn't a family drama. This was a federal crime, and she had just walked it right into my lap. The deeper I looked, the colder it got. The first problem started when I saw a paper asking for government money. It was sent through a group called the Haven Collective. Amaris said this group was to help people feel better and heal. But something felt wrong. The paper was signed by Cashin Rook. That made my stomach twist because Cashin had died a long time ago, back in 2012. I had even held a flag at his funeral. He was a brave medic. He had saved 3 soldiers from a burning car in a place called Kandahar, but he got hurt and died on the way to the hospital. And now, somehow, his name was on a list to get money for PTSD help. That didn't make sense at all. It wasn't just Cashin. When I looked closer, I saw other names. Some people were dead. Some were alive. Their personal information was taken without asking them. Every single name was connected to a bigger plan. I could see fake computer addresses, forged signatures, and secret accounts. Someone who really knew what they were doing was hiding everything, but in a way that could be seen if you looked carefully. They weren't just stealing money. They were moving government money into hidden bank accounts in other countries. They made it look like the money was being spent on normal things like office supplies or salaries. But it wasn't. Then I saw something called Virex Holdings. It was a company in the Cayman Islands. The name made my heart race because I had seen it before in secret government files. And now it was showing up in my family's records. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't scared, but I knew something big was about to happen. I knew I had to understand what was going on. I sat alone in the dark. The soft light from my laptop made shadows on the walls of my small kitchen. My computer was full of files. Tax papers, access logs, email messages, and reports about money. There were papers with numbers and names I didn't recognize, but they all pointed to the same thing. One file really caught my attention. It was a message Amaris had sent to someone in another country. The message was weakly encrypted, which means it was poorly hidden. I was able to open it in less than 10 minutes. Inside, there was a scary line that made my chest tighten. Package secured. Clearance updates pending. Awaiting extraction. My breath stopped. Package extraction? This wasn't about stolen money anymore. It wasn't about my name or my reputation. They were using me. They were using my military history, my government access, and my secret credentials to cover their crimes. Every stolen dollar had my medals attached to it. Every broken rule went through doors only I knew about. For the first time in a long time, I felt real fear. This was more than betrayal. This was espionage. Someone was spying, and they had used me as a cover without my knowledge. The next morning, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I reached out to 2 old friends. One had worked in Canadian signals intelligence, and the other had been part of NATO's cyber threat division. I told them just enough so they could understand the danger. We met in a quiet cabin far from the city, 2 hours north of Lunenburg. There were no phones, no computers, no internet. Just us, the papers I had brought, and our eyes that still understood the stakes. I told them everything I had found. They listened silently. Then Malacha, who had once spoken to Parliament about foreign spying cases, finally said something. "This isn't just dirty money," he said quietly, with a tone that made the words heavy. "They're selling access." I nodded because I already knew. They weren't selling documents. They weren't selling papers. They were selling secret doors into places that should never be opened. I realized that for weeks, I had told myself this was about my family. But it wasn't. It was about national security. And if I didn't act, I would become part of the problem. That night, I sat by the window and stared at the streetlights flickering below. The scariest battlefield I had ever stood on wasn't a war zone with bullets and explosions. It was my own family. I needed to ask them to meet me at the house, not Amaris. Just the 2 people who raised me. My mother opened the door. Her face was unreadable, like she had learned how to hide her feelings a long time ago. My father stood behind her, arms crossed and silent. We hadn't spoken since the lies started. The headlines. The public stories. The way the truth had been twisted. They led me to the living room like I was a polite visitor, not their daughter. I put the folder gently on the table. I knew it was heavy with information, but I didn't flinch. "I know," I said, my voice steady. "I know about the stolen identities, the fake companies, the secret data sent through offshore accounts. I know you both approved it. Neither of them moved. No surprise. No guilt." I continued, trying to make them understand. "Did you ever stop to think about what this did to me?" My mother looked down at her hands. Her fingers twitched slightly. My father stared through the frosted window. "You were always gone," my mother said softly. "Even before the forces. Always somewhere else." "Amaris stayed," my father said flatly. "She cared. She showed up. I felt the words hit me like a cold wind. She exploited you, I said inside my head. Sharper. She used your trust and your names, and you gave her the keys. My father spoke slowly, almost like he had practiced it in his mind for a long time. Sometimes you stand with the child who stays, he said. The silence after that felt like exile. It felt like being alone forever. I picked up the folder again. Now I'll make my choice, I said. They didn't stop me. They didn't say another word. Outside, the cold cut through my coat and hair. I drove back to my apartment, the one place they hadn't touched. That night, I locked up all the files. Every account, every email chain, every name. Then I turned on a secret line that had been dormant for years. A line that only a few people could reach. It was time to act. The reply came back in less than an hour. By sunrise, I was in an empty warehouse near Dartmouth. Laptops glowing on the tables. Celine, Maris, Orion, all veterans and truth seekers, were there. We worked together, building everything document by document, line by line. They thought I was alone. But I wasn't. That silence they thought meant I was defeated actually meant I was planning. We were ready. The day of the court hearing, I wore my military uniform. Not as armor. Not to hide. But as proof. Proof of everything I had been through. Every inch of that moment had been earned with hard work and careful planning. Amaris sat across the courtroom with her husband and legal team. She didn't look at me. My parents sat behind them, faces unreadable. Amaris wore a gray blazer and a face full of rehearsed concern. Their lawyer spoke with sharp precision. He described me as unstable, emotionally compromised, and dangerous after decades in uniform. He twisted my deployments into stories of abandonment. Silence became secrecy. The judge listened quietly. When Amaris took the stand, she called me paranoid, cold, and unreachable. She even teared up, right on cue. I let them talk. I didn't rebut. I didn't argue. I walked slowly to the bench, reached into my case, and pulled out one document. Your Honor, I said clearly, this is my only submission. The judge took it and started reading. First line, second line, third line. By the fourth line, his brow furrowed. Seal the room, he said. No one could leave. The tension in the room was heavy. The bailiff locked the doors. Amaris stiffened. Her husband's face was drained of color. Then they came. Federal agents, silent, direct, and without warning. They moved straight to Amaris and her husband. Every lie they had told unraveled with every step. Handcuffs clicked in the bright fluorescent light. The judge read the charges aloud. Fraud, identity theft, breach of national security. Amaris's husband didn't resist. Tears streaked his face. My parents said nothing. As they passed me, her husband whispered. They pushed me and didn't answer because I believed him, but I didn't excuse him. Later, I requested protection orders for every veteran named in the breach. The judge granted them immediately. I didn't give interviews. I didn't seek applause. I went home. That night, under the warm glow of my desk lamp, I filed the charter for a new foundation called Honor Trace. Its mission was clear: protect veterans from digital exploitation. There was no ribbon cutting. No cameras. Just purpose. Weeks later, I received a letter handwritten from a widow in Ontario. We thought no one would fight for us, she wrote. Then you did. I held the letter quietly. Not silence born of pain, but peace. Peace I had built with my own hands. Peace I had earned after years of fighting, learning, and protecting those who could not protect themselves.